So when you have filled the last hole here, you should have 14 stitches. And you can count by looking at the overhead view starting here. That's a little V and then another little V and so on. And you could just count the outsides of the V's. Going all the way around, you should have 14. Now, if you turn to the side, you can't work into the last hole because the tail is there. So go ahead and turn to this side and pull the tail out. Just have it sit there for just a minute. Now you have still a little bit of a crowded hole, but you have enough space to get the last stitch in. So squeeze that through. This is the hardest one of the whole thing. And finish your single crochet here. That would make number 15. When you make your last stitch and then you turn it back this way, it shrinks the first one. So it makes it difficult to count. But there is one here. The other complicating factor is that the tail is still coming out of here and kind of blocking the back side of this stitch. So you can remove that as well. And you can have the tail lay here or lay here. I usually have it kind of just stuck in the inside. So now this little kind of smushed stitch, that is your number 1 stitch. Kind of disappeared, but it's still there. So counting the outside, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and the loop on your finger. I want you to actually get up to 17 stitches because I'm finding when I do this project that 15 is too narrow. So the first increase I'm going to make is right in this spot right here. And to make an increase, all you need to do is put another loop inside of here. So push a loop through of the same size. Now put this on your finger. So basically all you're doing, if you flatten it out, is you've just added an extra loop. Very simple. Then we need to go over to this squished stitch right here. Again, this is going to be the hardest one of the whole thing because it's so tight. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to start working up the sides with a slip stitch, which is actually easier than a single crochet. If you wanted to, you could do single crochet up the sides, you could do double, you could do any stitch you want, but we are doing the slip stitch because it looks cool. And we're also going to do something called back loops only, which you'll see abbreviated as BLO. Just means that in these little V's that you see all along, we'll be working into the back part, so the inside part. So when you go to stick your finger under, you're just sticking it under the back or the inside part, okay? So this very first one, like I said, is very squished, but you're gonna get your finger wedged under there. And I always forget this part. Before you start working, you wanna have your yarn actually coming from behind. So just place it behind. Get your finger under there. You have 2 loops. You just need to reach for the working yarn, which is here, and pull a loop through both of those. So like I said, it's a little tight on the first one, but get a loop through. That's 2 fingers wide. And then you're just going to continue over to the next one. Remember, back loop only. Here's the next one. Reach your finger under, pull a loop through. Keep going around the circle. Back loop only. Reach, pull through. I'm doing it pretty quickly because I've done it a lot of times, but you may want to go nice and slow to try to make those loops as uniform as possible. And I would say a little bigger than what seems natural. So 2 fingers at minimum, maybe 3, just to get your sides to be nice and wide and not too squished together. This is the pattern you do for the entire rest of the basket. The only thing is we have added 1 extra stitch, and like I said, I like to add 2. So somewhere around the middle, I've gotten about halfway around, I'll add my second extra loop. Again, just pulling 1 extra loop through here and then keep going as normal. Very simple. The only tricky thing is when you get past that added loop on your next row, it might look a little funny or it might seem a little squished. So be careful when you work through that loop that you don't drop it or forget it. See how this is kind of like zigzagging a little. Once you get a couple rows done or worked past it, it will even out. But on the first try, it gets a little bit uneven. So I'm going to show you as I get back up to where I started, which is this series of like 3 right here. I'm going to make sure that I don't miss any. So here's 1, 2, and 3. See, now it's much more even, just running very nice and evenly. So now you just keep going. So let's stop and do a count though, because I'm encouraging you to count, so I should do it myself. If my finger is here where I'm working, I'll start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So that's exactly what I want. I want 17 stitches all the way around every row until I finish. How do you know you're finished? You run out of yarn. In crochet, there's no last row like knitting, so you just stop. Basically, when you get to the end, and you'll be 6, 7 inches tall by then, you'll find the end of your rope, and the last loop that's on your finger, you should have maybe 6 to 8 inches left. When you get to that point, you'll take that rope and run it through the last stitch, and you'll just pull until this last stitch tightens into a knot. And then you'll have this little tail to deal with. I usually go over to the next stitch. We're pretending that this is the last row. Tuck that under, pull it tight, and then usually that will create a nice transition from this stitch to this stitch, and then you'll just have this tail to deal with. So you'll turn it to the side, and you'll start lifting stitches like this and just tucking the tail under the stitch just to hide it. And so since you'll have high sides at that point, you'll have, you know, a few stitches. And then if you run out, you can cut off the excess. And then you'll do the same thing with your other tail that you had at the beginning right here. It is a little bit different because it lines up with this spot where we had our first and last stitch, and there's a little bit of a hole there. So if you want to, you can poke your tail back out and figure out some way to kind of fill that hole. You could go around the outside and back in through one of these holes, or I like to just kind of wrap it around another stitch nearby, kind of like that. And I find that it just fills in the gap just a little bit. And then you'll finish weaving it on the inside, snip off the rest, and then all you have to do is attach the handles. So that's the basic crochet part. Again, it's called a slip stitch. It's probably the easiest stitch you could want to do. Just always remember to count those, and that you're using back loops only, which is the inside there. So it's always just pulling the yarn through those 2 loops. Voila!